talk about something most men never get taught, and that's the way emotional power works. See, men are taught to be protectors, providers, logical thinkers. But rarely are they taught to read the emotional playbook that some women operate from. Not because women are evil, but because emotional leverage has become the silent strategy, one that's been perfected, passed down, and even celebrated. The kind of power that doesn't yell, doesn't push, doesn't even raise a finger. It just influences. Quietly, strategically. Here's how it works. You meet her and everything feels amazing. She's sweet, she's attentive, she's vulnerable just enough to draw you in. You feel important, needed, maybe even special, but very quickly you notice a shift. She starts to withhold affection a little. Responds slower, uses words like "I just need space," or "I don't know what I want right now," and suddenly you are chasing the emotional high she once gave you freely. That's not by accident, that's emotional power in action. What most men don't realize is that women, especially the ones who understand this dynamic, don't have to scream to be heard. They know that a simple change in tone, a withdrawn compliment, or a subtle pout can do more than any argument ever could. And if you're not emotionally grounded, you'll fall into the trap of over-explaining yourself, over-proving your worth, and begging for her attention. Attention that's being rationed like a reward system. It's the same principle behind why some guys will do absolutely anything, and I mean anything, to get back into her good graces. Buy gifts, apologize for things they didn't even do, rearrange their entire lives just to earn a smile. And that's the trap, because it was never about logic or fairness. It was about the control she gained the moment she realized you'd do anything to keep her approval. The power isn't in her words, it's in your reaction to them. The moment you need her to validate you, you've already handed her the keys to your peace of mind. And many women know this, not maliciously always, but intuitively. It's a soft form of dominance, emotional dominance. And the reason it's so effective is because it's invisible to the untrained eye. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand it, the game changes. You stop falling for the bait. You stop interpreting her moods as something you need to fix. You realize that not every sigh, every silence, every passive-aggressive comment deserves a reaction. You start leading with emotional stability instead of emotional desperation, and that's when everything shifts. Because women only have emotional power over men who lack emotional discipline. When you become the man who can stay calm, composed, and intentional no matter how many emotional curveballs get thrown your way, you become immune to manipulation. You stop being the puppet and start being the one who moves on his own terms, and trust me, when that happens, they feel it. The pull back, the silence, the focus you redirect back to yourself. That's when the real attraction begins, not because you're playing a game, but because you're no longer playing theirs. And that is the beginning of the end for anyone who thought they could control you with emotions validation. That's the word nobody's talking about, but it runs the show. The truth is, validation is a currency. And most men are broke, not financially, but emotionally, because they spend it everywhere on everyone without ever checking the return. You see, attention, compliments, likes, constant praise. Those aren't just innocent gestures. They're powerful forms of emotional currency. And when a man hands them out freely, especially to women who haven't earned it, he creates a false economy. One where she's rich in validation and he's empty, wondering why he never gets the same energy back. But here's where it gets dangerous when you validate a woman too quickly or too often. You strip away the mystery, the value, the balance. She hasn't done anything yet to deserve that level of praise, and yet you're pouring it on like she just cured world hunger. And whether she realizes it consciously or not, it creates an imbalance, because people don't value what comes easily. They value what's earned, and when you give validation away like candy, it starts meaning nothing, not to her, and definitely not to you. Now, I'm not saying you should never compliment a woman. That's not the point. The point is when and why you do it matters. Is she showing genuine character? Is she making effort? Is there mutual interest and respect being exchanged? Or are you just validating her because you hope it'll earn her affection? Most men are operating from a place of emotional hunger. They give validation hoping to get some back. They think, if I keep showing her she's beautiful, special, different, maybe she'll choose me. But that's not attraction. That's negotiation, and the moment you try to negotiate your worth, you've already lost ground. Validation becomes toxic when it's used as a tool for approval, because it turns you into the one who's always performing, walking on eggshells, trying to impress, trying to win her over, while she just sits back and collects. And once she knows you'll give it no matter what she does, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer a challenge. You're an option and eventually an afterthought. Let's be real. The women who get flooded with attention every day are immune to generic praise. The fire emojis, the "you're so beautiful" messages, the comments about how any man would be lucky to have her, their background noise. And if you're doing what every other guy does, guess where you land? In the background. But the man who holds back his validation, who offers it intentionally, who gives it only when there's real reason, that man stands out. Because his words have weight, his attention isn't handed out, it's earned, and that makes it valuable. Rare, magnetic. So many men think being overly nice, overly available, overly expressive will set them apart. But it doesn't, it blends them in, because validation without standards is desperation in disguise. And women can smell it. They might not say it, but they feel it, that neediness, that lack of self, worth hiding under layers of compliments. You want to shift the dynamic, take your validation back, not out of bitterness, but out of awareness. Stop reacting to beauty like it's rare. Start recognizing effort, depth, and reciprocity. Make your attention expensive. And when you give it, let it mean something. Because the moment you realize your validation has value, and stop handing it out like it's worthless, you'll start seeing who really deserves it. Let's talk about the chase, that thing so many men think is natural, even romantic, the endless pursuit. The constant proving of worth, the backhand, fourth game where you're expected to try harder the more she pulls away. But let me ask you something. Have you ever stopped to ask why you're chasing? Because here's the truth most men miss. The chase is manufactured. It's not a coincidence. It's not organic. It's not fate. It's strategy. Some women have learned that the moment you believe you have to earn her interest, not through connection, but through effort, you become predictable. You become manageable. You become the one trying while she's just observing. And that's where the power shift begins. It starts off subtle. She responds, but slowly, shows interest, but inconsistently. You're never quite sure if she likes you, and that's by design. Because confusion creates obsession, the less certain you are, the more you invest. You keep trying to get back to that moment when things felt mutual, when she seemed interested, when you had some momentum. But now, it feels like she's drifting, so you try harder, you call more, compliment more, show up more. And what does she do? She steps back even further. It's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because the moment you accepted the terms of the chase, you gave her control. Now, your attention is the reward, but her attention is the bait. She dangles it in front of you just enough to keep you moving, but never enough to satisfy you. And suddenly, you're no longer pursuing a woman, you're chasing a feeling, a high, a fantasy. The real question is this: what are you really chasing? If you're chasing her attention, her validation, her affection, you've already placed her above you. You've already told her, without saying a word, that her value exceeds yours, that your time, your energy, your effort are worth spending just for a shot at being chosen. But the men who understand this game don't chase, they evaluate, they observe, they stand back and see if the energy is mutual. If she's showing up consistently, if she's genuine or just playing a part. Because the truth is, when a woman is truly interested, there is no chase. There's alignment, there's effort from both sides, there's clarity. It's the ones who want to be chased that create the maze. They want to be desired but not claimed. They want to be admired but not connected with, because connection requires vulnerability. Effort, intent, and not everyone is ready to give that. So when you find yourself chasing, stop and ask, is this woman emotionally unavailable or just emotionally manipulative? Is she unsure or just feeding off my effort? Am I really attracted to her or just addicted to the challenge? Because let's be honest, a lot of men are chasing women they don't even like that much. They're just stuck in a loop, trying to win a game that was rigged from the start. The minute you stop chasing and start choosing from a place of self-respect, from a place of clarity, the game ends. You stop looking for breadcrumbs and start looking for substance. You stop reacting to her pullbacks and start asking, does this even serve me? And that's when the whole dynamic flips, because the one who doesn't chase doesn't get played. Let's get one thing straight. Simping is not the same as being kind, respectful, or emotionally available. Simping is when a man abandons his self-respect in the hope of winning attention, affection, or approval. It's when a man gives too much, too soon, to someone who hasn't earned it, all because he thinks that being nice enough will guarantee love. But that mindset is a trap, and it backfires every time. Most men who simp don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're just being caring, thoughtful, attentive. But there's a difference between being intentional and being desperate. Intentional men act with purpose. Simps act from insecurity. They overextend, overgive, overexplain, all while getting nothing of real value in return. And the worst part, the more they do it, the less respect they get. See, simping puts a woman on a pedestal she didn't ask to be on. It turns a regular interaction into a performance. The man becomes the entertainer, the provider of constant praise and comfort, hoping it will someday be enough to earn a seat at her table. But here's what simps don't get. Women don't fall for men they feel superior to. They fall for men they respect, men who hold their own, who value themselves, and who don't need to beg for attention. Think about this. If you keep texting her nonstop, responding within seconds every time, showering her with compliments she didn't earn, and offering emotional support while she gives you the bare minimum, what message are you sending? You're saying, I'm so desperate for your approval that I'm willing to erase my own needs and boundaries just to keep you around. That doesn't make her love you more. It makes her tolerate you until she doesn't. And yes, some women will milk that dynamic. They'll keep you around as a safety net. Someone to vent to, someone to entertain them, someone to validate them when the guy they actually want isn't texting back. But that doesn't mean she values you. It means you're available, and being available is not the same as being chosen. Here's what simps don't understand. The more effort you give without reciprocity, the more invisible you become. Not because effort is bad, but because unequal effort makes you look weak. And weakness in this context is not about physical strength, it's about emotional imbalance. You're doing too much for someone who's doing too little, and over time that gap kills attraction. So what's the alternative? Self-respect, boundaries, a clear understanding that your time, energy, and emotional resources are valuable. That you don't have to prove yourself to someone who isn't showing up. that you're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're here to recognize who's worthy of your presence. When you stop simping, you stop chasing approval and start demanding reciprocity. You stop putting women on pedestals and start engaging from eye level. You stop thinking that love has to be earned through suffering and start realizing that mutual effort is the baseline, not the reward. And guess what? When you move like that with purpose, with standards, with quiet confidence, everything changes. You no longer get used, you get respected. You no longer get ghosted, you get chosen. Because the man who respects himself doesn't need to beg for affection, he inspires it. Let's talk about what really drives attraction, not looks, not money, not smooth lines or flashy status. It's masculine energy, that centered, grounded, unwavering presence that doesn't ask for attention, it commands it. Masculine energy isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's not about dominating anyone. It's about knowing who you are, standing on your values, and moving through the world with purpose, not approval, seeking. The problem is, too many men have disconnected from this. They've been taught by media, by culture, sometimes even by well-meaning people, that being masculine is toxic, outdated, or problematic. So instead, they suppress it, they shrink, they soften themselves down, thinking it will make them more acceptable, more desirable. But what they don't realize is this: when you abandon your masculine frame, you abandon your power. And women feel that. They might not say it directly, but they sense it immediately. Masculine energy creates safety, direction, certainty. When a man walks into a room with quiet confidence, not arrogance, not performance, but real inner knowing, he doesn't have to chase validation. He becomes the gravity in the room. People respond to that. Women are drawn to that. But masculine energy isn't about posturing or pretending to be tough. It's about emotional control, discipline, intent. It's the ability to stay calm when others panic, to speak with clarity instead of impulse, to lead your own life instead of waiting to be led. And the man who can hold that space, who can be the calm in the storm, who doesn't overreact, who knows when to speak and when to stay silent, that's the man who stands out. When you're grounded in your masculinity, you stop being reactive. You're not flinching every time she changes her tone. You're not trying to fix every problem she throws at you just to stay in her good graces. You're not giving your power away just to avoid conflict. You observe, you assess, you choose. That strength, not the kind that flexes muscles, but the kind that lives in the mind. And here's something most men don't realize. Masculine energy sets the tone for the entire dynamic. If you're in your masculine, she naturally leans into her feminine. She becomes softer, more receptive, more nurturing. Not because you demanded it, but because your energy invites it. But the opposite is also true. If you constantly slip into passivity, indecision, emotional instability, she starts compensating, taking control, making the decisions, becoming less emotionally expressive. The polarity gets flipped, and attraction slowly dies. So many men think being masculine means being controlling or emotionless. But it's actually the opposite. A man in his masculine can express emotion, but he's not ruled by it. He can love deeply, but not lose himself in the process. He can lead, but still listen. He can be firm without being cold. That balance, that's rare, and it's powerful. The world doesn't need more men pretending to be something they're not. It needs more men who are fully grounded in who they are, clear, focused, and emotionally steady. That's the kind of energy that doesn't fade when things get tough. It anchors you, and it attracts people, especially women, who are tired of playing games and ready for something real. So stop looking outward for permission to lead, to speak, to act. Stop diluting your masculinity to make others comfortable. Because when you own that energy fully, unapologetically, everything around you starts to respond. Let's talk about the most overlooked move a man can make, walking away, not out of spite, not as a game, but as a firm, grounded decision rooted in self-respect. The ability to walk away is one of the purest forms of power, and most men don't have it. Not because they can't, but because they've been trained to believe that staying, enduring, and constantly compromising is what makes them worthy of love. But here's the truth. The man who stays no matter how he's treated is not being loyal, he's being afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over, afraid of letting go of the idea he built in his head. And so he stays. He tolerates the disrespect, the manipulation, the hot and cold behavior. He stays when he's no longer being valued, when his needs aren't being met, when he's being used for emotional support with nothing real in return. And slowly that eats away at him, not just emotionally, but at his very sense of identity. See, walking away isn't about cutting people off over the smallest thing. It's about recognizing when your presence is no longer appreciated, when the energy isn't being matched, and when the relationship, whatever form it takes, is costing you more than it gives. And instead of begging for change, you decide to be the change. You choose yourself. A lot of men think if they just love her more, give her more time, more chances, she'll eventually see their worth. But it doesn't work like that. People don't value desperation, they respond to boundaries. And nothing sets a boundary louder than silence, the kind of silence that says, I will not tolerate less than I give. That's the real shift. The moment you walk away, not to manipulate her, not to make her chase, but because you know your value and you're no longer willing to accept treatment that doesn't align with it, that's when you reclaim your power. Most women have seen 100 men chase them, plead, apologize for things they didn't do, stay loyal to a fantasy while being ignored in reality, but the man who calmly walks away when he's not being respected. That's different. That sends a message, not just to her, but to yourself. It tells the world, I'm not afraid to be alone if it means protecting my peace. It tells your future, I'm clearing space for something that actually meets me where I am. And it tells every version of your past self who ever felt like he had to settle, you're finally free. But don't get it twisted. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough about yourself to stop bleeding for someone who kept giving you paper cuts. But heaven sees development, but God sees. It means you understand that being a good man doesn't mean being a doormat. And when you make that move, things start to align. You stop wasting energy trying to prove your worth to someone who never saw it. You stop chasing closure from someone who was never open. You stop repeating the cycle, and the peace that follows. That's what freedom feels like, because the man who can walk away with his dignity, with his standards, and with his heart still intact, is a man who will never be finished.